Marty Supreme is a great American movie. That is not necessarily a qualitative judgment, although Josh Safdie's solo feature is one of the best movies of last year, garnering rave reviews and performing phenomenally at the specialty box office. It is more a broader classification. Marty Supreme belongs to a canon of films engaged in exploration of the American character with a conscious grace and import. It is a film that positions itself in the pantheon of great American cinema, a 2.5-hour sweeping period epic with international scope devoted to an intense and unjudgmental character study of a man possessed of a singular ambition. However, it's also a movie about the single most annoying 20-something-year-old that you have ever met who likes to play tennis, but, smaller. The magic of the movie lies in the juxtaposition of those two extremes. A great American movie, but with the smallest possible stakes. And in that way, it feels like an attempt to update that sort of classical cinematic storytelling for a modern generation. So this week, we're going to talk about Marty Supreme. This will involve talking about the movie in detail, with some spoilers along the way. So if you haven't seen it yet and want to go in completely blind, well, you're up the river without a paddle, and you can just table the video for later.
Come on, keep going!
If you're still with us, we're going to have a ball. Loosely inspired by the life of ping pong champion Marty the Needle Riseman, Marty Supreme is the story of a young 20-something ping pong player, Marty Mauser, who believes that he is destined for greatness and who has a natural aptitude for ping pong. While his family are skeptical of this ambition, Marty believes that table tennis is the future and dedicates himself to the pursuit of a career in the sport, no matter what the cost.
Do you make money at this little table tennis thing?
Not yet.
How do you live?
Well, I live with the confidence that if I believe in myself, the money will follow.
However well-drawn its central subject is, and however mesmerizing its central performance is, Marty Supreme is about more than just a cocky New Yorker. The film is about America. Marty travels overseas as an ambassador for America, donning a paddle with the stars and stripes. His trademark orange ball reads Marty Supreme, Made in America. He suffers his first humiliation, losing to Japanese player Endo, which is a huge propaganda victory for post-war Japan. The film feels closer to something like Brady Corbett's, or if you're feeling particularly pretentious, Brady Corbet's The Brutalist, which feels oddly appropriate given that last year Timothy Chalamet lost the Best Actor Oscar to Adrien Brody's towering performance in that literally monumental film. Like The Brutalist, Marty Supreme is a portrait of the Jewish experience in post-war America that is also the story of a singularly talented artist who quickly finds himself dependent upon an exploitive industrialist. Both The Brutalist and Marty Supreme belong to a canon of movies about difficult protagonists trying to find some mode of expression or fulfillment. Stories that are essentially gritty fairy tales about the American dream. Dream big, the promotional materials for Marty Supreme urge the audience, rendering the subtext as text. However, there is one big distinction that separates Marty Supreme from The Brutalist and so many other entries in this canon of movies about American aspiration. American cinema is full of singularly talented and difficult men fighting for some greater cause, possessed of some divine gift that they must see through to fruition. There is a fetishization of the great man, and Marty himself buys into it.
I have a purpose, and if you think that's some sort of blessing, it's not. It means I have an obligation to see a very specific thing through, and with that obligation comes sacrifice.
This sort of rhetoric can feel very earnest and self-important when talking about, say, architecture.
I'm an architect.
You're an architect?
I'm not.
The Brutalist is the story of an architect, Laszlo Toth, who survived the Holocaust and who is trying to build a gigantic monument to that massive tragedy that is also an expression of his deep and abiding love for his wife. However difficult Toth might be to work with, there's an understanding baked into the movie that maybe it's okay to be difficult when dealing with something as profound and important as, the Holocaust. In contrast, there's a wry playfulness to Marty Supreme, given that Marty is singularly obsessed about table tennis. Part of the magic trick of Marty Supreme is the skill with which it balances its sympathy and empathy for Marty with a willingness to acknowledge the inherent absurdity of believing that one's defined purpose and obligation is owed to something that remains so remarkably unpopular in the United States to this day that there are fan websites of the sport that talk openly about why Americans don't like it. Ping pong is, to put it frankly, not the stuff of great sports movies. Discussions of the film tend to cite boxing movies like Martin Scorsese's Raging Bull as among, quote, the several feel-bad toxic alpha male touchstones swimming around in Marty Supreme's DNA. It feels notable that, allowing for the masterpiece that is Balls of Fury. I'll acknowledge that.
Tastes good.
Perhaps the single most significant entry of table tennis into American popular cinema remains as a joke in Forrest Gump.
Backhand, forehand.
There is a knowing and winking irony here. It's dream big printed on a ping pong ball, as the slogan for a movie about a sport that is effectively a miniaturized version of an older and frankly still more popular sport. If Marty Supreme is a great American movie, it is one that is made at a very deliberately reduced scale. This is not to suggest that Marty Supreme hates its protagonist. The film strikes a deft balance with Marty. Like Toth in The Brutalist or Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull, Marty is extremely unlikable. He is obnoxious, arrogant, self-important, constantly hustling and manipulating and scheming to get what he wants, while antagonizing virtually everybody in his orbit. However, Marty is also never quite as unlikable as LaMotta, never as explicitly violent.
You want to get physical? Like an ape?
More than that, Marty Supreme manages to engender some audience sympathy towards Marty by subjecting him to constant and perpetual humiliation. Only a couple of scenes after saying that he would never tour with the Harlem Globetrotters, Marty is on tour with the Harlem Globetrotters and forced to use his gifts to play against a trained seal for the audience's amusement. It is a strange observation to make about a 2.5-hour period piece about American identity that has broken specialty box office records and seems likely to be a major awards contender that involves its lead characters stealing stones from the pyramids while traveling the world with the Harlem Globetrotters, but there's something striking in how deliberately small Marty Supreme feels. This feels like part of what this great American movie has to say about modern America. The film is set in 1952, in the midst of the post-war economic boom, albeit on the cusp of a minor recession. If you're an American and over 25, you have taken part, knowingly or unknowingly, in one of the greatest social revolutions in history, wrote Peter Drucker in January 1952, almost as if he were directly addressing Marty Mauser himself. Marty Supreme is set at the dawn of what will become known as the American century, the point after the Second World War at which America emerged as the dominant global power. The film is haunted by future echoes of that 1950s vision. The soundtrack, for example, is saturated with 1980s synth hits from bands like Tears for Fears, Public Image Limited, and Alphaville, which is reinforced by David LaPatton's synth-heavy score. The specter of a resurgent Japan victorious over America speaks to those 1980s fears of, quote, an economic Pearl Harbor. There are more contemporary parallels. Marty Supreme features Kevin O'Leary in a major supporting role as the very literal embodiment of unchecked capitalism. In real life, O'Leary is a North American businessman turned reality television star turned populist right-wing politician. He is, and we are not the first ones to note this, Canada's answer to Donald Trump.
What, you lost your wife?
And a lot of money.
That's more important.
These past 2 years have seen the end of American exceptionalism, the premature conclusion of the American century, and perhaps even a sudden wake-up from the American dream. This has been a preoccupation of much of the last year's cinema, from the super soldiers without a country in Thunderbolts, to the failing systems and structures of a house of dynamite. Marty Supreme presents a glimpse of that moment in the wake of the Second World War, where it seemed like anything was possible. But that glimpse is informed by the audience's sense of knowing tragedy. Indeed, one of the big recurring motifs in Marty Supreme is the idea that the bill comes due, that at some point there is a debt that needs to be settled. In the film's opening moments, Marty enjoys a casual tryst with his old friend Rachel, but that results in a pregnancy that ends up driving most of the rest of the movie. Marty runs up a huge room service bill in the first act and alienates the international table tennis community, which results in him having to hustle for the rest of the film. He alienates Milton Rockwell in their first meeting, and their second meeting too, and so he spends the rest of the movie having to claw his way back. There's a sense that this post-war boom was always something that came with a cost. Eventually, everybody would have to settle up. This 1950s setting is also juxtaposed with a much more modern sensibility. While Marty Mauser arguably belongs in the lineage of difficult men at the center of these mythic American narratives on film and television, he feels like a more modern understanding of aspiration and yearning than somebody like Jake LaMotta or even Laszlo Toth. He is at least as much a hustler and a con artist as he is an actual artist. He possesses the attributes of the modern millennial aspirant. He has the grind set for hustle culture. He aspires to be the Sigma male. This extends to the film's marketing. In place of selling Marty Supreme as an important movie to be seen on premium formats, so much of the marketing has come down to Chalamet himself, as a sort of meta, self-aware expression of the film itself.
You know what I mean? This has got to be like one of the most important things that happens on planet Earth this year.
The young actor is hustling like the movie's lead character, giving interviews about how his performances over the past 2 years have been, quote, some top-level shit. Hell, he's even rapped. This is just part of who Chalamet is.
I'm really in pursuit of greatness.
He used to be a YouTuber. He's dating a Kardashian. And there's a sense of that all-encompassingness to what Chalamet is doing. Like Marty, Chalamet does not have an off switch. He can run hot, he can run cold, but he's never Timothy Chalamet. He's talked about how he empathizes with that line about how failure
Doesn't even enter my consciousness.
which makes sense. Marty Supreme is an example of a very traditional sort of movie that is tailored very specifically to Chalamet's generation. If The Brutalist was a deliberately classical take on that very familiar template of the great American movie, Marty Supreme offers a truly modern interpretation. It's a film in tune with this moment, this generation, this culture. It updates the rhythms and the tempos of that established formula for the modern world, in which the greatness to which its constantly hustling and grinding protagonist aspires is a shot in a sport that nobody cares about. And even then, they have to compromise.
These are facts.
Marty is, to put it frankly, pushing so hard for so little. The stakes of the movie are, in a grand sense, quite small, but Marty fights tooth and nail for them. Born in 1995, Chalamet exists on the cusp of the generation Millennials and Gen Z, but he speaks to both demographics. As a character, Marty resonates with a generation of young people struggling to hit the same milestones that their parents did, for whom success is much harder. They live in a world where the things that their parents took for granted, like home ownership, marriage, career stability, seem like impossible aspirations, and the world is actively telling them that they exist out of reach.
You have no power here.
The magic of Marty Supreme is taking a thoroughly modern character like that and dropping them into a framework we associate with the great social epics about American life. Marty Supreme is a great American movie for a lesser American moment. I've been Darren Mooney, and this was The Backdrop.